Hope you're having a good day today. It is October 12th. We are going to be looking at the account of the Transfiguration and the verses directly after that. Luke chapter 9, verse 28 is where that account begins as the Lord is up on the mount with Peter, James, and John, and they they fall asleep. You hate to say it, but that's what happened. They were heavy with sleep. When they wake up, they see Jesus speaking with Moses and Elijah, and they're talking about what is about to happen in Jerusalem. Okay, so there they are. They're asleep. Uh, Peter says what he says. Oh, it's good for us to be here. Let's make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. He wanted them to stay, not knowing what he said. Verse 33. And then the voice comes. The cloud and the voice comes. This is my beloved son, hear him. All right, they come down the mountain, and we know from the parallel accounts a little bit more, give us a little bit more. But just looking here, you have, while Jesus was up on the mount with Peter, James, and John, there was a man who had a son who was his only child, and he was possessed. And he had come to the disciples who were at the base of the mountain to cast out, he was actually looking for Jesus, but the disciples, the 9 who remain, they couldn't cast it out. So he says, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you?" And then he casts the demon out. Verse 43, everyone's amazed at what happens. Jesus turns to the disciples while that's happening and says, "You better listen up. The Son of Man is about to be betrayed in the hands of men." They did not understand this saying. It was hidden from them. So, and they're afraid to ask. Verse 46, then a dispute arose amongst them about which of them would be the greatest. Jesus, perceiving the thought of their heart, takes a little child and says, "Whoever receives a little child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me." Luke chapter 9, verse 49, John answered, "Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we forbade him because he does not follow with us." He says, "Do not forbid him, for he who is not against us is on our side." It came to pass, when the time had come for him to be received up, as he's on his way, he set his face towards Jerusalem. As they went, they entered a village of the Samaritans, but they did not receive him. And it's James and John seeing this, and they say, "Lord, do you want us to command fire, come down, burn them out, like Elijah did?" He says, "You don't know what manner of spirit you're of. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them." And they went to another village. Okay, I think it's an interesting chapter. And here they are. And he says, and I just think it's interesting that they're arguing about who's the greatest. They're arguing about who's the greatest, and yet he's just told them something, and they don't understand it. So you don't understand something the Lord said, and yet you're going to start arguing about who's the greatest. You don't get it, but you're going to argue. And it just makes you shake your head, and I suppose we all do this from time to time, where you don't understand something, and yet you're going to still be puffed up. And arguing about who's the greatest, there's got to be some pride going on. And it's like, really? You know, it's real easy to say, because at the base of the mountain, they're not able to cast the demon out. Now, I wonder who's arguing about who's the greatest, because Peter and James and John, they're up on the mountain, while the other 9 apostles, they're at the base of the mountain, they can't cast the demon out. And I wonder if Peter, James, and John were like, "Oh, if we would have been here, we could have done this." It's like, Peter, James, and John, you were just asleep during the Mount of Transfiguration. You were asleep. Peter, you pipe off because you don't know what to say. And it's like, y'all aren't getting the job done. Y'all aren't getting the job done, and yet when someone else is casting out demons in the name of the Lord, you're like, "Don't do that." So you're going to tell him not to do the very thing that you could not do. If he was casting out demons in the name of the Lord, the only way he could do that is if the Lord gave him authority to do that, just like the Lord had given them authority to do these things. The problem was with this one, he says this kind only comes out by prayer and fasting. Or I believe, yeah, that's correct. And they obviously had not been doing that. But they couldn't get the job done. And then they're going to argue with someone who was casting out demons. If that doesn't make you shake your head, I don't know what will. Then they come to the Samaritans, and they're like, oh, they don't receive us. Kill them all. It's like, guys, you're asleep during the Mount of Transfiguration. You're not casting the demons out. You're arguing with people who are. You're arguing amongst yourselves about who's the greatest. And then you want to kill the Samaritans because they're not receiving me like you think they should. And he says, you don't know what kind of spirit you're of. You don't know what kind of... Let me look at how Luke phrases this one. Let me bring it down a little bit. You do not know what manner of spirit you are of. And he turns and he rebukes them. And here they were, and it's just kind of it's an interesting chapter. And sometimes folks want to argue, and they don't understand themselves. And they're not getting it done, but they still want to argue. And sometimes, well, others aren't receiving like we think they should, and frankly, we're not receiving it either, and so we start arguing about them. And we look at the speck in their eye, and we ignore the beam in our eye. And I think there's a little bit of that going on. So, hope this brief look into Luke chapter 9 has been helpful for you. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Hope you join us for our next look into God's Word.